Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to discuss the alarm sounded on the front page of the Daily Express today as they talk about anger over the betrayal of Brexit freedoms. Because I have a list as long as your arm about the freedoms I used to have but don't any longer, and even more freedoms lost by other people in the UK. But I've yet to hear of a freedom that any of us gained since Brexit. So I'm curious to find out which of these mythical freedoms we're now losing because of the prospect of a limited youth mobility deal with the EU. But first, for daily news and commentary, please hit the subscribe button to stay notified. So, front page of the Daily Express, who were presumably in a very bad mood because they've had to show the smiling face of a North African immigrant being celebrated by many of their readers. Nothing seems to upset the Express more than an African immigrant being popular in Britain. So I guess they had to vent some of their fury in the main story. And the headline goes like this: anger over the creeping betrayal of Brexit freedoms. To which three questions immediately arise. First, who is angry? Second, what are the Brexit freedoms? Third, how are these unspecified Brexit freedoms under attack? The story is a complaint that Labour are laying the groundwork for some sort of youth mobility agreement with the EU, though they are desperate for it not to be called a youth mobility agreement because of the fear of a very negative Pavlovian response from the public to the dreaded term freedom of movement. The article claims that Labour have flatly rejected the concept in the past, but as I've been saying for many months, this has never been true. Labour have said they're not looking at such a proposal, or they're not working on such a proposal, or they have no plans for such a proposal. All the usual diversionary terms used in politics, but they have never once ruled it out. However, as long ago as last August, the government told the Times, and I quote, "No one will say it publicly, but there is acknowledgement that this is an area where we will need to move." It was only a question of working on something that wouldn't give the Home Office a heart attack on net migration figures, which Labour need to show consistently falling over the course of this Parliament. Because despite what I've said about Labour getting some of their social issues very badly wrong, including strategically wrong, voters do believe immigration is too high, and they are prepared to use their votes on that issue. But the youth mobility scheme of some sort was always going to happen. However, none of this answers the intriguing question inspired by the Express as to what Brexit freedoms are being betrayed. Because to betray a freedom, you've got to have that freedom in the first place, haven't you? What is it? We've lost all of our freedom of movement. The Tories persuaded the public that this was somehow gaining something, by the way, but clues in the name. We can no longer freely travel around Europe. Visits are limited now. We can no longer work or live in the EU without all the red tape which would come for any third country citizen. We can no longer freely buy from or sell to our European neighbours. This means some products are now more expensive. Others are not available at all. Others still keep being in short supply. We had the situation a couple of years ago when we couldn't get tomatoes in the supermarkets, a staple of the veg section of any supermarket. And so one of the idiot Tory ministers at the time told us to use turnips instead. Because obviously cheese and turnip sandwiches are just as good, aren't they? Even food that is available spoils more quickly these days because of delays in the supply chain built in by Brexit, creating much more food waste. NHS medicines are more frequently unavailable now. Some people have very stressful times of it finding pharmacy after pharmacy doesn't have drugs in stock that are essential because of the self-defeating trade barriers we erected. And since when was being stuck for hours on end in long queues to visit the continent for a holiday a freedom? And when we left the EU, the Tories wasted no time in diluting lots of other freedoms, our consumer rights, workers' rights, personal freedoms, such as the right to protest and the right to play in a river without needing emergency treatment in hospital. Because for all the fear of the European Court of Justice that Brexit inspired in the public, take a look at some of their judgments. They're there. These cases are brought by ordinary people against dodgy governments or dodgy corporations. There are undeniable freedoms which we had and have lost with Brexit. Brexit supporters may deny caring about them. Oh, I didn't really need that anyway. Okay, fine. But they cannot deny losing them, and some people do care about them. But what freedoms did we gain in return? I'm curious to find out. So what does this Express article say? Oh, it doesn't. For the Express, it's actually quite a long article. It's very wordy for a Monday. They must have been really miffed at having to celebrate an African immigrant given so much cheer in Britain. But nowhere, maybe a little bit outside Manchester, half of Manchester were probably happy, but nowhere does it bother to elaborate on which Brexit freedom or freedoms are imperiled, as indicated in their headline. So then we turn to the anger. So who is angry about this then? Well, that also seems to be shrouded in a bit of secrecy. The article mentions a group of dozens of backbench Labour MPs, 60 in fact, who are supportive of the scheme, indeed demanding it. Didn't see any expressions of anger. They quoted Suella Braverman, but they didn't describe her response as angry. She was against it, of course. They also quoted another tragic has-been, Jacob Rees-Mogg. Again, no reports of anger from him. In fact, they quoted Moggy as urging the Conservatives to come out against this proposal, suggesting they have not yet done so. So after reading the article, I'm thinking to myself, look, you've reported on 2 Conservatives who are opposed to any deal with the EU and 60 Labour MPs, backbenchers, who are pushing very hard to get this specific agreement, plus 1 Labour Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, talking supportively of the scheme as well. So that's like 61 in favour, 2 against. And the 2 against you've not reported that they're angry about it. As for the scheme itself, a youth mobility scheme is not freedom of movement. We also have youth mobility schemes with several other countries. Nobody complained about those. The Conservatives arranged them. The argument against a youth mobility scheme with the EU specifically was supposed to be always about, oh yeah, Canada, we wouldn't get that many from Canada because of the bloody ocean in the way you see. We could have loads coming from Europe. But the proposal includes a cap on numbers. So that argument disappears down the toilet quicker than the so-called Brexit freedoms that actually exist. I mean, when you've got a Daily Express article talking about Brexit freedoms in the headline, and they can't name a single one in the article, I don't mean they're not valid. I mean, they didn't even have a stab at it. They didn't even point to what they thought was a Brexit freedom in the article. So in that situation, I think it's fair to say even Brexiteers don't believe in them. Not so much as a mention of how bendy the bananas are now, which is a cloned fruit, which is the same everywhere anyway. Or prawn cocktail crisps. Do you know what? I swear, I think it's harder to get prawn cocktail crisps since Brexit, ironically. But I'll tell you what this Brexit bollocks is really about. Because, yet again, a gutter newspaper publishes a reactionary headline which bears no relation to the article itself. It's not about concern on some aspect of government policy. They're doing it in order to persuade the public to keep supporting moves which weaken our economy. We have businesses struggling right now due to lots of pressures, some topically right now because of Donald Trump, who was getting very positive cover in the Express until recently. Other pressures are a result of having to pay more for supplies because of Brexit, or struggling to sell products around Europe now. Other pressures include simply not being able to hire workers in parts of the country with low unemployment but high demand for things like restaurants, pubs and so on, where a young person travelling Europe could step in for a few months. And when a business can't get the staff it needs, it doesn't make as much money at the very least, which means lower tax revenues, which means, more risk to public services. And sometimes they go under just because they cannot get enough staff to even keep going at all. And then everyone loses their job. A youth mobility scheme shouldn't be seen as a concession. It should be seen as a boost to our economy, because that's what it is. But the likes of the Express, they want to crush our economy so that it's easier to continue to sell it to foreign billionaires for a discount price. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can click the join button for memberships. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.